WADR. Promoting dialogue.
It's 6 p.m. in Dakar, 7 o'clock in Lagos. Good evening and welcome to Newslink on West Africa, Democracy Radio broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. Here are the top stories. Public concern mounts over arrest of two Senegalese journalists.
It is absolutely worrying to maintain freedom of the press. We are faced with a context very worrisome.
Nigerian Senate confirms new service chiefs to bolster national security. Togolese religious leaders tackle money laundering and terrorist financing in West Africa.
It is not necessary for people to abuse their donations, illegally finance actions that terrorism, for example.
Independent candidates challenge exclusion from Guinea's electoral process. Petition Supreme Court to suspend sponsorship code. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. We begin in Senegal, where there is a growing response following the arrest of journalists Maimouna Ndour Faye and Babakar Fall. Babakar Fall of Radio Future Media was taken into custody this Wednesday. On Tuesday, Maimouna Ndour Faye, head of 7 TV, was also detained at her station's office for the same reason. These arrests occurred after the two journalists interviewed Majamba Jain, who is currently in France and has an international arrest warrant issued against him. Various press organizations and unions are condemning these actions as an assault on press freedom. Christopher Atichu has the details in this report.
The Council of Broadcasters and Press Publishers of Senegal, CDEPS, was among the first to respond to the situation. In a statement, the organization condemned the arrest of Maimouna Ndour Faye, describing it as a blatant violation of press freedom. They emphasized that giving a voice to an individual, regardless of their legal circumstances, should not be considered a crime. Additionally, the Union of Information and Communication Professionals of Senegal, SENPEX, voiced its concerns, arguing that interviewing someone, even if they are facing prosecution, is a fundamental part of the right to information. The organization also stated that the action of the two journalists do not constitute an obstruction of justice or incitement to violence. Furthermore, the Committee to Protect Journalists also reacted, describing these arrests as a regression of democratic freedoms. Musa Ngom, its country representative, provided this perspective.
It is absolutely worrying to maintain freedom of the press. It is all the more worrying when we hear that reforms are underway. In any case, the reforms promised will remember that one of the major promises of the state was to defend the press. The general rule is often that the interpellations of journalists, for example, are banned. Either it is a convocation, and even I must say, a convocation in this case of the press was not necessary. We are faced with a context very worrisome, in a context of regression in a democratic space.
At the same time, the citizen collective No Lag expressed its indignation, denouncing the arrest as an attack on press freedom. Similarly, Seydi Gassama, the executive director of Amnesty International Senegal, called for the immediate release of the two journalists. In a social media statement, he urged the Senegalese government to respect its international commitments concerning press freedom and to enhance the authority of the Council for the Observation of Ethics and Professional Conduct.
Christopher, teacher, with that report. In the Central Sahel region, particularly Mali, the military government has announced the cancellation of several hundred permits for gold and mineral exploration granted between 2009 and 2021. This decision marks one of the most sweeping reviews of the country's mining sector in recent years. According to a statement released on Wednesday, the decision taken by the Ministry of Mines affects companies operating across the regions of Kai, Kulikoro, Sikassol, Bugunin, Goa, and Kidal. Authorities say the move is part of a broader effort to clean up and regulate the sector, which had long been plagued by irregularities and poor oversight. Imo Edet has the details.
At least 8 mining firms are directly impacted by the revocations, though officials suggest more reviews could follow. The governor explained that the affected companies failed to meet several key obligations, including required levels of investment, respect for project timelines, and compliance with administrative and environmental standards. The Minister of Mines said the decision aims to restore transparency, accountability, and efficiency in the management of Mali's mineral resources. It also intends to create space for new investors who are more compliant with the legal and regulatory framework. Mali is Africa's third largest gold producer, and the sector plays a vital role in its economy, contributing more than 70% of export earnings and a significant share of government revenue. However, mining governance has often come under criticism, with watchdog groups pointing to corruption, weak enforcement of environmental standards, and limited community benefits from mining activities. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Mines has pledged to work with local authorities and communities to ensure that future mining operations prioritize sustainability, transparency, and local development. New permits, it says, will be granted under stricter conditions and closer supervision to prevent the same irregularities from recurring. Observers note that while the revocations could temporarily disrupt investment in the short term, they may also signal a shift toward greater accountability and self-determination in Mali's management of its natural wealth.
Imo identified that report. Still in Mali, the United States Embassy is urging all American citizens to leave the country immediately, warning of a worsening security situation. This alert follows a surge in attacks by the terrorist group JNIM in recent weeks. While Bamako's international airport remains open, the embassy cautions against traveling by road due to frequent ambushes on major routes. The warning comes as Mali faces a severe fuel shortage that has disrupted daily life and economic activities nationwide. Francis Boniface tells us more.
The United States Embassy urged its citizens to leave the country due to the worsening security situation. The embassy cited a surge in attacks by terrorist group JNIM in recent weeks as the main reason for the advisory. It noted that Bamako's international airport remains open and that commercial flights are still available. However, the embassy warned against traveling by land, citing frequent terrorist attacks along major routes connecting Mali to neighboring countries. For U.S. citizens who choose to remain in Mali, the embassy advised developing emergency plans, stocking essential supplies, and preparing to shelter in place for an extended period in the event of a sudden deterioration in security. The alert comes amid a severe and ongoing fuel shortage that has disrupted economic activity across the country. Since early October, Mali has been grappling with what officials describe as an unprecedented fuel crisis affecting several regions.
Francis Boniface reporting there. Let's travel to Togo, where religious leaders are discussing the threat of money laundering and terrorist financing. The event, which began Tuesday, is themed the role of religious leaders in the fight against money laundering and the financing of terrorism. It is an initiative by the Intergovernmental Action Group Against Money Laundering in West Africa, GIABA, in collaboration with the Togolese government. Abdullahi Hassan has the details in this report.
The 2025 edition of the Global Terrorism Index, published by the Institute for Economics and Peace, indicates that in the Sahel region, 51% of deaths in 2024 were linked to terrorism. This figure represents an increase from 48% in 2023. Additionally, 19% of all global terrorist attacks took place in this region. Although Togo has been relatively spared from such violence, it faces a growing threat of violent extremism along its northern border with Burkina Faso. To counter this, the contributions of religious leaders are being sought to prevent, monitor, and raise awareness within communities. Cha Binonsi Akwiteme serves as the president of CENTIF.
It is not necessary for people to abuse their donations through religious leaders to illegally finance actions that, terrorism, for example. It is to help them detect risks when they are sent money. For example, they must declare it to the CRF or be registered at the level of the territorial administration.
In related efforts, participants in an upcoming event will engage in presentations, case studies, and interactive workshops designed to deepen their understanding of the mechanisms and challenges associated with money laundering and the financing of terrorism. Coco Joka is one of the trainers at this event.
Aware of these challenges, the government has undertaken vast actions to strengthen the resilience of communities in the face of multiple risks. The implementation of the operational plan of the multi-risk early warning system, the development of the national map of the risk areas, the strengthening of the hydrometeorological equipment network. On this occasion, I call on everyone to mobilize.
At the conclusion of the seminar, a national roadmap will be adopted to enhance social mobilization, community awareness, and advocacy against criminal activities and religious intolerance.
A report from Sylvie Wadraogo in Lomé, voiced by Abdullahi Hassan.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's now bring you some political matters. In Guinea, independent candidates are criticizing their exclusion from the electoral process established by the General Directorate of Elections and the new electoral code. They claim that municipal mayors are refusing to sponsor them as required by the code and are instead favoring the transitional president, General Mamadi Doumbouya. On Tuesday, the aggrieved candidates appealed to the Supreme Court requesting the suspension of the sponsorship process. The concerns of independent aspirants come just days before the deadline for submitting candidate lists for the December 28 presidential election. Mandu Maruf Sidibe is their spokesperson.
We have regretfully noticed our inability to meet the conditions of sponsorship as planned by the Electoral Code. No special delegation president has agreed to sign our sponsorship forms. Most of them have stated that they must refer to their hierarchs. It turns out that this same authority seems to be a candidate for the presidential election, thus creating an obvious situation of conflict of interest. The refusal of special delegations to sponsor independent candidates, although legally founded, creates a political and institutional blockade, contrary to the democratic spirit, to the principles of equality, to the chances, and to the political pluralism enshrined by the Constitution. We demand an immediate revision of the conditions of sponsorship so that it is accessible to all candidates, including independents, the recognition of citizen sponsorship, allowing registered voters to freely sponsor the candidate of their choice, the suspension of institutional sponsorship by special delegations as long as the elected mayors are not in office.
Manduv Maru Sidibe is the spokesperson of the aggrieved independent candidates in Guinea. Elsewhere in Cote d'Ivoire, the criminal police summoned 7 senior officials of the Democratic Party of Cote d'Ivoire, PDCR-RDA, on Tuesday. Out of those who summoned hold key positions within the Common Front, an alliance formed between the PDCR and the PPACR. Following the summons of those PDCR-RDA members, Michael Gbagbo, a PPACR official and son of former President Laurent Gbagbo, was also summoned to the police prefecture in the Abobo district of Abidjan. No details have been released regarding the reasons for their summons. This development comes shortly after the presidential election in which President Alassane Ouattara secured re-election for a 4th term with 89.77% of the votes cast. Meanwhile, in Benin, members of the opposition Democrats Party are calling for the continuation of a peaceful electoral process towards 2026 general elections. They made the statement on Tuesday, a day after the party dual candidacy was invalidated by the Constitutional Court. The opposition party also denounces internal conflict within the body politics of Benin, including internal difficulties and leadership rivalries, as well as unfavorable political climate in the country. Patrick Duvaux, who was the spokesperson for the day, described the situation as a combination of factors that has compromised the party's effective participation heading towards the 2026 election.
In a current situation where the power of the state must change hands, our political and civic responsibility requires us to wish that the ongoing process goes to its end in peace and concord, and that the two remaining dues will not lose sight of the social expectation of many of us. The party, the Democrat, has nourished the ambition to conquer the power of the state, to redress public action without compromising the achievement of successive regimes that have been in charge of presiding over the destiny of our country. But alas, the opportunity to do so, the proof, will not be offered.
Patrick Jivo speaking on behalf of the Democrats Party in Benin. You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Public concern mounts over arrest of 2 Senegalese journalists. Togolese religious leaders tackle money laundering and terrorist financing in West Africa. Independent candidates challenge exclusion from Guinea's electoral process. Petition Supreme Court to suspend sponsorship code. Still ahead in the news, the Nigerian Senate confirms new service chiefs to bolster national defense. We also have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Many thanks for being with us. We are streaming live on YouTube at WADR and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Let's now focus on some parliamentary issues. First, in Nigeria, where the Nigerian Senate has confirmed President Bola Tinubu's nominees for the positions of service chiefs. Those confirmed this Wednesday are Olufunmi Oludeye as Chief of Defense Staff, Wadihi Shibu as Chief of Army Chief, Adi Abbas as Chief of Navy Staff, and Kennedy Aneki as Chief of Air Staff. The confirmation followed a 2-hour closed-door session where senators questioned the nominees on their plans to strengthen national security and reform the armed forces. This decision comes amid public debate over the abrupt changes in the military hierarchy, with some critics signaling issues associated with the purported coup attempt. Last week, President Tinubu reshuffled the defense sector. The presidency described these changes as part of efforts to strengthen Nigeria's national security architecture. Elsewhere in Ghana, the Speaker of Parliament, Aban Bagbain, has ruled that the controversial anti-LGBTQ+ bill must be reintroduced in the current Parliament. The Speaker justifies that the bill expired with the dissolution of the 8th Parliament. This clarification comes after a week of uncertainty and debate among lawmakers following the majority leader's argument that the bill had already been passed by the previous parliament and therefore did not need to be reintroduced. However, the Speaker firmly disagreed, explaining that all pending business before the 8th Parliament lapsed when that parliament was dissolved. He emphasized that the 9th Parliament must now take up the bill anew.
We have a new parliament, and therefore what was pending there came to an end and had to be reintroduced. It was actually transmitted to the former president. They wrote to tell us that they will not assent to it. The only constitutional error they committed was they didn't give us the reasons why they will not assent to it, and they did not also transmit the bill back to us. So the 9th Parliament, on resumption, took back the bill, and as you recall, that's a private member's bill. And so members of this House took it up. They've gone through the whole process as detailed out in our standing orders. But as it went through the process, the new government indicated that they wanted to take it as a public bill. I personally disagreed and made it known to His Excellency the President that Ghanaians wanted this bill passed through private members' bill. And so be it. We'll process it as private members' bill. It has to come back to the Speaker.
Ghana's Speaker of Parliament, Aban Bagbin. Elsewhere, the government of Liberia, in collaboration with the World Bank, is hosting a digital week in the capital, Monrovia. The initiative represents a strategic effort to reintegrate the country into the global digital ecosystem and harness technology for national development. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Abraham Parker reports.
During the launch of the event on Tuesday, Sekou Kroman, Minister of Posts and Telecommunications, highlighted the role of digital technologies as a tools for promoting inclusive growth, transparent governance, and enhancing national resilience. Minister Kroman stated that Digital Liberia Week reflects the government's unwavering commitment to coordinated action, strategic foresight, and inclusive progress.
We will also engage in critical consultation on digital agriculture, digital skills, two pillars that will shape the livelihood and opportunities of our people. From farmers to youth, from entrepreneurs to educators, we must ensure that digital transformation is felt in every corner of our society.
The three-day event will unveil essential reports and frameworks, including a comprehensive assessment of the telecommunication market. Joshua Wadr, World Bank country manager to Liberia, emphasized the critical importance of a robust digital foundation to ensure Liberia's connectivity both regionally and globally. She identified reliable networks, resilient systems, and effective institutions as key components of this foundation.
Digital technologies are not just tools, but they're enablers of better governance, private investment, and job creation.
These 3-day assessments align with Sustainable Development Goal 9, which focuses on building resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and fostering innovation. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Let's take you back to Nigeria, where the Nigerian Senate has confirmed President Bola Tinubu's nominees for the positions of service chiefs. The confirmation followed a 2-hour closed-door session where senators questioned the nominees on their plans to strengthen national security and reform the armed forces. This decision comes amid public debate over the abrupt changes in the military hierarchy, which some critics have associated with a purported coup attempt. Our guest is Momlas, a security and political observer.
One can't be too sure what prompted the president to suddenly change the service chiefs. Normally, when service chiefs are supposed to be changed, either some of them are got into a retirement age or stuff. But of course, the president has the right to change the service chiefs at any time he so desires. We can't say exactly what is likely to be the problem. It could be loyalty issues, it could be the lack of performance issues, it the ongoing rumors around the country around the issues of a coup plot or whatever, or it could just be a mix of all this. But what we know for certain is that the service chiefs have been changed abruptly without any prior notice. So here we have rumors of coup flying, and then suddenly service chiefs are changed. Of course, no one can beat their chest and say, yes, I have the authority to speak that this is the reason why this president has changed the service chiefs. But be that as it may, he has done it. But what is more curious to observers like us is the fact that when service chiefs are changed, it's always a wholesale change from the military to the Air Force, the Navy to the Naval Service, and even to the police. But here we have a situation where the service chiefs are changed, but the police hierarchy is still there. So it's something that is a bit kind of curious to observers.
And talking about the coup, how could the ongoing public debate and rumors of a purported coup attempt affect military morale and Nigeria's internal security stability?
Yeah, the issue here is that as I speak, unless I'll start to be corrected, there is no official statement from the military command, and there is no official statement also from the National Security Advisor's office. There is also no official information from the presidency itself addressing the issue of a coup or either of that. So since there is no official position on that, I wonder how the military can begin to look at that as a morale damper. Because although maybe some might say maybe because of the sudden change in the service chief, some that might be loyal to the outgoing service chief, or of course there are rumors of the high number of top military brass that are going to go with the service chiefs, because of course when service chiefs are changed, there is always this outflow of so many a lot of military top brass. And from media reports, we are hearing almost like 60-something senior military officers are penciled down for departure. So, of course, that can, in a way, dampen military morale, especially for those who are aspiring for a longer career span and all of that. But be that as it may, since there is no official statement from government on that nature, I don't think any military officer should use that as a yardstick to start dampening their morale.
Finally, sir, before I let you go, will the confirmation of the new service chiefs lead to any real improvement in Nigeria's security strategy and situation as a whole?
Yeah, it's left to be seen. It's left to be seen because for me, if you ask me to assess the past service chiefs, the only assessment I can use to assess them is the incidences of insecurity attacks, either from bandits or from insurgents. Say for the past 6 months, compared to what has been happening in the country, there has been a bit of a slight improvement, not very remarkable, just a very slight improvement in terms of attacks from even the headsmen here in North Central or in the Far East. Although, yes, we had a rumor of an attack in Northeast. So if you are looking at the incidences of security situation, you can say they didn't do too poorly. They didn't perform too poorly compared to the spate and incidences or intensity of the attacks that used to happen 6 months earlier than now. Based on that, the new service chiefs might want to ride on that and keep improving on what is going on. They wouldn't want to have a situation whereby the law will fizzle out and then we start having another spate of attacks. So I want to believe that they want to ride on the back of the little respite that we are experiencing now, to ride on the back of that and make it stronger. So of course, I expect them to ride on the back of all this that I've said earlier to deliver to the president. Our delivery here means more security and safety for Nigeria.
Momlaz is a security and political observer. And now here comes Christopher, our teacher, with the latest in the world of sports. Good evening, Chris.
Augustine, good evening. How are you?
I'm okay. What's the latest?
Well, the latest in the world of sports, a coach has actually lost his job. That's the Zambian national team head coach, Avram Grant. I remember you really know him, a former Chelsea manager and then
very well
Black Stars head coach. So let me bring you the details. So the Zambia Football Association has announced the exit of Avram Grant from his role as head coach of the country's national men's football team. The announcement, signed by the head of media and communication for the association, was made known today as the Southern African nations prepare to compete in the 2025 AFCON in December.
Was there any reason?
Yes, the reason is for poor performances and then poor results after every game. They argue that over the past 7 games combined in the 2026 FIFA World Cup qualifiers and then the African Nations Championship, CHAN, Zambia have just won 1-0 over Tanzania in the World Cup qualifiers.
Does Zambia really have the caliber of players like foreign base that are doing well up there before you want to
that is one point of contention, because you need to look at the materials that you have to be able to be very competitive in any tournament or any game that you actually go in. So that is actually the case for the Zambia. But of course, as a coach, it is your duty to scout for talent and enhance for talent. So if you've been with the team for too long a time, if players are not really producing or matching up to the standard, you need to obviously look elsewhere and then get the materials for your team so you'll be able to build a team. That was why you actually employed.
Great. What's about the Nigerian women football?
Yes, and so the Nigerian Women Football League is actually back, as the board has officially announced that the 2025-2026 season will commence on November 26, 2025 and conclude on April 22, 2026, marking the start of another exciting chapter in Nigerian women's football. Now, according to the league organizers, 20 clubs will battle for supremacy and what promises to be one of the most competitive seasons yet.
Great. And I know there were scouts, some good talents like the date and won the CAF Women's Champions League.
Obviously.
But quickly, what am I hearing about Madrid Vinicius Juniors?
Vinicius Junior has actually noticed that, man, a manager is always a manager. He's come out publicly to apologize after his rant against Coach Alonso in the El Clasico over the weekend against Barcelona. So he's come out to say, Coach, I'm sorry, I was out of action.
Okay, those are the kind of discipline that the sports demand. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Falilu Sow and Ismaila Kamara for the technical support. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram at WADR English, on Facebook, WADR English Service. I am Augustine Cully. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and